Hello, everybody. Yes, my name is Richard Kastelein. I'm a Canadian. I live in the Netherlands. I run a website called Blockchain News. I started in October last year, and I'm here to share some of the findings that I've had writing over the past 6 months about this new phenomena called blockchain. I'm going to start off with a video, just to give you guys a quick rundown on what blockchain is. How many people actually know what blockchain is? Raise their hands. Oh, great. Well, I hope that I can enlighten you with some new things about the chain. So let's start with the video.
Advancement so powerful that it transforms the very basic pillars of our society. A technology which fundamentally influences the way that our economy, governance systems, and businesses function, and could change our conceptual understanding of trade, ownership, and trust. This technology already exists, and it's called cryptocurrency. People often think of Bitcoin as only virtual money or a transaction system. But if you look closer, you'll see that the monetary aspect is just the tip of the iceberg. That's because Bitcoin is a groundbreaking internet technology for which money is merely one of the possible applications. Money exists to facilitate trade. Through the centuries, trade has become incredibly complex. Everyone trades with everyone worldwide. Trade is recorded in bookkeeping, and this information is often isolated and closed to the public. For this reason, we use third parties and middlemen we trust to facilitate and approve our transactions. Think of governments, banks, accountants, notaries, and the paper money in your wallet. We call these trusted third parties. This brings us to the essence of Bitcoin. Bitcoin software enables a network of computers to maintain a collective bookkeeping via the internet. This bookkeeping is neither closed nor in control of one party. Rather, it is public and available in one digital ledger, which is fully distributed across the network. We call this the blockchain. In the blockchain, all transactions are logged, including information on the time, date, participants, and amount of every single transaction. Each node in the network owns a full copy of the blockchain. On the basis of complicated, state-of-the-art mathematical principles, the transactions are verified by the so-called Bitcoin miners, who maintain the ledger. The mathematical principles also ensure that these nodes automatically and continuously agree about the current state of the ledger and every transaction in it. If anyone attempts to corrupt a transaction, the nodes will not arrive at a consensus, and hence will refuse to incorporate the transaction in the blockchain. So every transaction is public, and thousands of nodes unanimously agree that a transaction has occurred on date X at time Y. It's almost like there's a notary present at every transaction. This way, everyone has access to a shared single source of truth. This is why we can always trust the blockchain.
We see the power of what this blockchain can become. Venture capitalists see this. But even more exciting is the disruptive minds of entrepreneurs are seeing the power of this. And they're building new businesses in new paradigms that are going to change the shape and the face of all industries.
Wow, that's pretty heavy. For some reason, it's not. There we go. There we go. A pretty heavy statement from Barclays. Very interesting. For me, there was five stages of blockchain understanding, and I'm not sure what stage you guys are at yet. But in the beginning, I was actually quite dismissive about it. I was like, oh, this is attached to Bitcoin. This is connected to this, this underground Silk Road stuff for drug dealers, and I wasn't really that interested. But then I started seeing, the buzz about it and talking about it, and some other people in my city in Groningen were involved in blockchain, and the idea of taking the blockchain technology, which underlies Bitcoin, and utilizing that for other purposes. Then I started to get interested. Some pretty important people I know are interested in this. And then suddenly when I got it, I was like super excited. I was like, this could change the world, and I was ready to set up DAX and DAOs and all these new companies and get ready to enter full force into it, without really realizing that I truly didn't understand it, because it's a very complicated concept. Then it came to an understanding, followed by a realization how tough it is. the big changes to make in society for blockchain to be accepted within the current paradigm which we exist. So there's no magical bullet, but there's really a lot of great ideas starting to come out, and we're going to see over the next 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, some say 10 years, blockchain technology begin to really change the way we do business. So let's talk about in the beginning, 5,000 years ago. The Sumerian society really started language for humans in the beginning. And part of the reason why they did that is they wanted to keep ledgers of trade with the priests within their society. So really what kind of initiated our own creation of written language was actually the reason or the need to keep ledgers, which is kind of interesting. The centralized ledgers were controlled by the priests and played a huge role in shaping the journey we as humans made from hunter-gatherers to farming communities in the beginning. So the first blockchain, this is kind of a fun story. There's a little island in the South Pacific called Yip. And the Yip, I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of it, but the Yip Islanders, they have these huge stones that they use as their currency. And they have to go to another island, actually, to get the stones. So, you know, they don't have these pretty limestone stones on their own island, so they have to go about 400 miles to get them themselves and bring them back to the island. What was interesting is that, there was a catch. They had to sail to other islands to get it. They were so big they were rarely moved. But what was interesting is the fact that people on the island realized they would switch ownership of the stone between people, but they wouldn't move the stones, actually. They would just stay where they were. So if I wanted to give a dowry to so-and-so's bride or the family, I would say, okay, you own the stone now. And the fact is that it reached a consensus amongst the islanders. Okay, well, everybody knows that, you know, Papau changed the stone over to the next bloke, and he now owns that stone. And the stones never moved. They just sat there in the middle of the village. But there was actually another stone that disappeared in the ocean, or a couple of them, we don't know. And even though these stones never made it back to the island, they still had ownership over them. So they weren't actually even there. They weren't even visible. They were still part of the currency that was used. So these stone coins existed in a decentralized community-enforced ledger. Stone coins were simply a unit on the stone coin blockchain, tracked by group-verified transactions. Ownership was a matter of public declaration. By spreading to the words, it became verification by spreading the word to others. A deal made in secret or dishonestly was impossible, as transparency was part of the protocol. Starting to sound a lot like a blockchain. So in 2009 or 2008, to make a quick jump into the future, a fellow named Satoshi Nakamoto, who's a pseudonymous character, we don't actually know who he is. Nobody knows. There's been quite a few people that have claimed to be him. Came out with a paper describing Bitcoin, which was the first paper we've seen with a decentralized cryptocurrency. In 2009, he released the open source software and to a few people in the cryptocurrency world, and then in 2010, he promptly disappeared. It was the first decentralized digital currency and was built on something called the blockchain. And Nakamoto continued to collaborate with other developers until 2010, then he disappeared. We don't know where he is today. We don't know who he is. And that makes it kind of even more interesting, the whole story behind the blockchain. In 2013, a young Russo-Canadian named Vitalik Buterin described his new project called Ethereum as a next-generation cryptocurrency and decentralized application platform. Development was funded by a crowd sale in August 2014, and the Genesis block, marking the initial release of the platform, occurred on July 30th, 2015. So this is relatively new. But Ethereum was really the first project to extend blockchain beyond Bitcoin's peer-to-peer money system. And his team is basically very focused on smart contracts. And smart contracts are quite interesting. They allow not only transactions to occur, but allow rules into the transactions. So for instance, if you put insurance, a policy on the blockchain using smart contracts, if you don't adhere to rules, different actions can be consequences depending on the rule structure itself. But it's no longer about just finance anymore, and that's when I really got excited, when I made that realization that, hey, I'm not really into Bitcoin. I don't write about Bitcoin at all, as a matter of fact, really, at my publication. That's when I became fascinated with the topic and the idea that, hey, we can take this underlying technology called blockchain from Bitcoin and place it into other sectors. And there's all kinds of things you can do with it. These are just a few. I mean, this is probably most of them, but this is the list that I've tallied together. Supply chain and trade agreements, capital markets, banking and finance. NASDAQ is actually building a blockchain solution over here in Estonia, not far away. They've chosen to use an Estonian team to help them build something for the NASDAQ market in the UK. Music, film, and other intellectual property rights. How can we find a new distribution system for film and television to make it from the point of the creator to the consumer? Cutting out the middleman, more or less, the labels and the studios, and allowing the creators to really benefit from what they've created. Insurance is a whole other area. I just described a little bit about it. Voting and governance systems. I mean, forget all this electronic voting and stuff nobody really knows who made it. You got a Republican company making voting machines in the United States and controlling it. It's kind of dodgy sometimes, but this is another area where it can fit in nicely. Bulletproof blockchain protocol. One vote, one count. Voting and governance, identity also. There's a company, there is the movement currently going on with BitNation to create blockchain-based identities for the refugees from Syria, for instance, to help them legitimize who they are and follow that trail so they can enter Europe more easily. Real estate and property. There's a company called Factum that's working with the Ecuadorian government to get the land rights issue sorted out. There's another company working in Ghana doing the same thing. So they can, once they have a real tracing system of who owns what land where, it makes transactions much more easier for the people to move land between sources, sell, buy, or whatever. There's so much land in a lot of these countries that is up in the air with two owners or an owner here and paper filed in cabinets behind cabinets behind cabinets. Internet of Things, also huge. Why? Machine-to-machine communication. The blockchain allows to set up a cryptocurrency which can work in what we call micropayments or even nanopayments, 0.01% of a cent. So that allows massive transactions to go on, and when you consider the economy of scale, it can work out. We can actually create a system where a machine can operate and make a financial transaction with another machine based on a very small amount of money. Contracts and law. Maybe we'll get rid of the lawyers. I don't know. I doubt it, but there's certainly some room in there for blockchain to fit in. Health and medical records. I've been working with Philips in the Netherlands. They have a blockchain lab they recently set up. And the idea of being able to sort of consolidate everybody's health records into a private blockchain system where you have access and you have control over you want to share with whomever you want to view is something that they're very interested in. Customer acquisition and loyalty, escrow and custody services, smart contracts, distributed anonymous corporations, distributed anonymous organizations. A DAC recently being formed, a DAO, a distributed autonomous organization has recently been funded for over 100 million on the Ether platform using Ether money. They're setting up, can you imagine people investing 100 million into a company or a concept that has no leadership? And the people who invest into this will make the decisions on where that money gets invested. It's a new kind of venture fund, if you think about it. And it's all run on the blockchain, and it will be run on smart contracts. I think this quote from Mark Andreessen, how many people actually know who Mark Andreessen is? Mark Andreessen is the guy that gave us Netscape, the first internet browser. He's the one that gave us the internet, essentially. Before that, you didn't have a browser. You had to really understand DOS to access and do anything on the internet. So he's a really important person, a pivotal person in the internet that we use today. And he says that the blockchain's distributed consensus model is one of the most important, probably the most important invention since the internet itself. And he's heavily investing in it. He has a very famous venture fund called Andreessen Horowitz in Silicon Valley. The blockchain is one of the most fundamental inventions in the history of computer science. The consequences of this breakthrough are hard to overstate. So I was not alone in seeing this. Actually, he saw it way before I did. The World Economic Forum, the blockchain protocol threatens to disintermediate almost every process in financial services. The banks are scared. They formed an organization called R3. There's over 40 banks now, basically scrambling to come up with a solution because there is a fear out there that any kind of decentralized, disintermediated blockchain system that allows for no middle person in the business of transferring money from one person to another, or one bank to another, or one system to another, or one company to another is a threat to their business model. So they're working very hard at sorting that out. Blockchain technology continues to redefine not only how the exchange sector operates, but the global financial economy as a whole. This is from Bob Greenfield, the CEO of NASDAQ. As I said, he's building a blockchain solution in Estonia to help basically redefine the capital markets and how the stock markets work. They're testing, they're playing with it. It'll take some years before we see it. And The Economist, ledgers that no longer need to be maintained by a company or a government may in time spur new changes in how companies and governments work, in what is expected of them and what can be done without them. A realization that systems without centralized record keeping can be just as trustworthy as those that have them may bring about radical change. This is a conservative publication called The Economist. Blythe Masters is really interesting. She actually turned down a job to run Barclays investment bank, to stick with her blockchain startup. And she was with JP Morgan Chase for many years. She's a very powerful woman. She's the most powerful woman in the blockchain space. And she said, you should be taking this technology as seriously as you should have been taking the development in the internet in the early 90s. That's the stage we're at. We are in 1992 of internet, 1993 of internet. That's where blockchain is. Blockchain and music industry. Singer Imogen Heap has really been moving forward and pushing the agenda in the music industry. So we're not just talking about finance and the money world, but she said the blockchain databases controlled by individual musicians and artists are not only a way to ensure we get paid, but are a way of disrupting the entire outdated music industry. And I used to work in the music industry, so I know what she's talking about. The actual rights system is a nightmare. Using blockchain, she says, I might decide today's my birthday, I'm going to give away my music for everyone for free today. At the moment, I can't do that because it's out there. And once it's out there, I don't really have a say in it anymore. Blockchain in the art world. I recently published a story from Thierry Herman, the CEO of ArtPrice. By its very nature, the art market is the perfect market for a blockchain, and ArtPrice is leading in the right direction with all its players are looking for the serenity and confidence that an absolutely safe market provides. Blockchain in the art world again. ArtPrice's blockchain will reduce transaction costs, both for auctioneers, galleries, and museums. And it'll allow them the total control of data, the management of copyright payments, the traceability of artworks, the tracking of stolen or lost artworks, and dealing with customs authorities and the localization of artworks at any given moment. So it's really the blockchain can really solve problems in the art world as well. Blockchain and social media. This is a friend of mine, Maiten Field. He's the CEO of a company called Backfeed, and out of Israel. And his protocol rewards individual contributors through the distribution of tokens and the reallocation of individual influence or reputation within a given community based on the perceived value of their contributions to that community. The specific rewards granted to contributors and their corresponding influence in this community are calculated automatically by the workings of the blockchain protocol, proof of value, he calls it, and do not require any kind of central administration. So this is kind of taking Facebook, the concept of Facebook in a different direction, which it should have been done a long time ago. We should be rewarded for our contributions. I want to talk a little bit about blockchain in Poland because actually there's a huge history in this country of cryptography. And I interviewed a company called Bilon in Warsaw a few months ago, actually late last year. And I found out this story doing research from it, that these three guys in Poland, I'm not going to say their last names, but Marian, Jerzy, and Henrik, they were actually the guys that deciphered the code behind the machine, the Enigma machine made by the Germans in World War II. And they basically passed that on to the English, who got all the claim to fame for it at the end. But it was really these three men here in Warsaw that really took cryptography to another level. And actually, in cryptography circles, the work that they did solving the problem of the German Enigma program was the biggest leap in cryptography in 1,000 years, which is pretty impressive. An Arab mathematician and polymath, Al-Kindi, he wrote a book in the 9th century on cryptography, and it took another 1,000 years before it really took the next evolutionary step, and that happened in Warsaw. So Poland today is actually quite full of crypto talent, I call it. There's a plethora of learning facilities here I discovered. You have a cryptology center. You have a security group at the University of Warsaw. You also have facilities at Wrocław and the Polish Military University of Technology. It's one of the places in the world that's recognized as having a huge sort of pool of cryptography talent. And that, of course, doesn't necessarily cross over immediately to blockchain, but certainly it's one of the closest areas of research and skills that of people that can actually work with blockchain itself. So I interviewed Bilon, which I don't know, how many people know what Bilon is? Okay, there's a few of you. Bilon was interesting. It was a startup here in Poland, in Warsaw. They created the world's first blockchain-enabled bank-backed transactions that are compliant with regulators, which allow for bankless backing. So let me give you an example. They had a big Twitch festival. You know what Twitch is, right? The video platform where the gamers are on. And basically what Twitch allows, or what Bilon allows, is I'm a 14-year-old kid who wants to give money to my favorite Twitch star. How do I do that? Actually, with Bilon, I can. I can go to something like, I think, 30,000 stores in Poland, which now allow you to buy Bilon cash. I can go to the website. I can give some money to the person that I want to give it to, who I like. I'm 14 years old. I don't have a bank card. I don't have a bank account. The guy who I'm giving money to is 14 years old and 15 years old, and he doesn't have a bank account, or she doesn't have a bank account or a bank card. But the person who I give money to can actually go to an ATM machine in Poland and type in a number and take the money out. So there is actually no need to have a bank account. That's a fundamental change, and that's what Poland did first before anybody in the world. Bilon is actually technically not a cryptocurrency, it's a crypto cash because it's tied to the zloty. But what it's allowed for is not only that, for the bankless to make transactions and the kids, it's also, it can also be transferred in micro amounts and nano amounts down to 1/10 of a cent of a zloty. So it's one of the most interesting companies and probably the most interesting interview that I've done so far while editing blockchain news. So as a Bilon user, you don't need a bank account, you don't need a banking product, you don't need cards, you don't need checks. Anyone with a computer or a smartphone can start using the digital cash from the get-go. I'm not here to sell Bilon to everybody, but I just want to make you aware that there is some really interesting projects going on in Poland, and this is certainly one of them. So if you want to send 10, PayPal basically, anything under 10 euro is not profitable for them. It's a loss actually, because of all the steps it has to go through for you to give money to someone else within the current system. Anything under 10 euro, that's why you can't go to a website, like a news website, and say, I want to give this writer like 25 cents, because I read the article and I think that's a fair price. And if 10,000 people give the person 25 cents, then they've got a business model. But you can't do that because the way settlement is currently done within the financial system and the way it works, even with companies like PayPal or central authorization, distributed authorization, et cetera, there's just no way to currently do that. So this is the revolution, actually, that could be coming next, I think, certainly and hopefully for publishing companies and other intellectually property-based property companies that are moving stuff. Dealing in microcurrents, dealing in nanocurrency. So the Bilon blockchain system is currently backed by two large Polish financial institutions, the Alior Bank and Plus Bank. And they both adhere to both Polish and EU regulations, of course. So for the bankless, there is 28,000 stores in Poland where you can try Bilon if you want to. And Andrzej Horazak, I'll just call him that, the CEO of Bilon, who I spent some time with, transactions using legacy systems like PayPal are unprofitable below 10 euro. But with Bilon, every transaction is profitable. And this allows for micropayments for newspaper articles and even nano payments for the Internet of Things, which I mentioned earlier. And he's like, I asked him, well, why are the banks doing this? Why does the bank even want to have their money, the bankless dealing in their currency? But actually, one of the biggest reasons why the banks did it in Poland is they want onboarding. So they want to get these kids who don't have bank accounts yet to get used to their system and come over to them. So that was the carrot, I suppose, that was bringing a lot of them over. So I'm just about to wrap up. There is a shortage of blockchain experts, and actually, I read this quote from the Washington Post yesterday, and I wrote an article about it. And Bart Kant from Capgemini said there are probably less than 100 true blockchain experts in the world. So they're actually more plentiful than pandas are probably more plentiful than blockchain experts. And well, the future is bright. I like to say, if you're interested in blockchain, please explore it. It's a very interesting space. I write about it every day at Blockchain News, the-blockchain.com. And I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see it involved in a lot more verticals. Thank you very much. Any questions? No?
Yes, we have one.
Okay.
Hello, Richard.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for your great speech. I would like to ask you a question, just to know your opinion. As I know, Bitcoin has limitations of Bitcoins that can be mined. This is 21 million of Bitcoins. And blockchain technology is planned to be a new global opportunity. So how can blockchain technology with such limitations become the world trend that covers all, that substitutes banking transactions?
Okay, I'll explain that. Thank you very much for the question, because it's important. Probably I didn't make that clear. There are two types of, there's three types of blockchains. There's a public blockchain, which is Bitcoin, which is Ether, from Ethereum. There's a consortium blockchain, which is banks, so usually a group of banks, and there's what's called a private blockchain. So there are different levels. Not every project that's built on blockchain has to work on Bitcoin. Like the project that I was talking about that just raised 100 million, the distributed autonomous organization, that's going to run on Ether. And Ether doesn't have those limitations that blockchain does. So some banks actually, instead of having miners validate the processes, they become the trust agent, and that's called a private blockchain. A lot of the Bitcoin community absolutely hate private blockchains because it still leaves the banks in control. Anybody else?
Well, you just in a way answered part of my question, because I'm wondering, I've seen the internet startup about founding a company in Singapore or something like this, and I was wondering how to make it legal, because no one will want to make it legal, because there will be, where's the business model for them? Where's the business model for anyone to actually accept the new paradigm? Because if I start a company in Singapore using internet startup, then, and why banks would like to deal with me, why governments would like to deal with me, because in a way the Bitcoin is getting a lot of problems with getting ahead to the consumers, because big central institutions don't want it to.
Yeah,
so
I understand.
Where's the business model, so they will accept it and embrace it rather than fight it?
Well, the business model comes as this. Look, all these big companies, all these big banks, all these big capital markets, NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, all the largest banks in the world are all exploring blockchain. And you notice that they've actually changed the word now to distributed ledger technology, DLT. They want to separate it as far as they can from Bitcoin. So if you're going to do a startup in this space, my recommendation is there are startups that actually use the blockchain for creating, they use the Bitcoin for creating blockchain projects. But the projects that most investors and most companies are looking at now are the ones that disintermediate themselves from Bitcoin and either use another system like Ethereum, which is more credible, or a consortium blockchain, which is a group of banks, say, that want to do something together.
But
or a group of insurance
in that
companies.
Case, we still have some kind of third party that is, in a way, able to gain profits?
Could be, yeah. I mean, it depends. You have a startup, you want to work with someone, right? So, or you want to build something like the DAO, which is controlled by nobody. So currently, the startups that I'm seeing are mostly working with big organizations and companies.
Okay.
And they're building blockchain, not without Bitcoin being mentioned anywhere. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Cheers.
Can I just ask you another
One
question?
more?
Or two questions, very quick ones.
Sorry.
First of all, I'm here. First of all, I'd like to hear your opinion about the Bank of England developing its own blockchain. Have you heard about this?
Yes, I have.
And the second question is about the Bitcoin and blockchain. Once all the Bitcoins are mined, who do you think will maintain the blockchain?
The second question, I don't know, to be honest. I don't think anybody knows. Maybe the Chinese will, because they actually control almost 50% of the mining now. The first question, Bank of England, actually there was some issues around how much they were involved in the actual research about it. So there was kind of a kickback from the story. There was some researchers doing some research allegedly for the Bank of England, but it turned out later on that they kind of backpedaled and said, well, the Bank of England is not really that involved. And I think the Bank of England kind of said, slow down, we don't want to, this is too much for us. So anyway, I got to go, you guys. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, feel free to grab me and I'll have a chat with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everybody.